Hello again. Here we have we have the schematic representation of leading theories of comparative development, where magbibigay ako ng brief description or summary of what the arrows in the schematic represent. So, refer na lang kayo sa figure in the ebook for better understanding. In arrow 1, physical geography connecting to income and human development. In arrow 1, geography shapes the initial institutions and societal structures before colonization, such as government, land use, and social organization. In arrow 2, in this argument, when potential settlers face higher mortality rates or perhaps other high costs, they more often ruled at arm's length and avoided large long-term settlement. In arrow 3, where mortality was low, populations were not dense and exploitation of resources required substantial efforts by colonists, institutions broadly encouraging investment, notably constraints on executives and protection from expropriation, were established sometimes as a result of agitation from settlers who had the bargaining power to demand for better treatment. The influence of geography on pre-colonial institutions is captured by Arrow 4, accounting for institutional differences. Geographic variables have little on influence on incomes today. Their statistical estimates imply large effects of institutions on per capita income. Pre-colonial institutions also mattered to the extent that they had influence on the type of colonial regime established. This possible effect is reflected by arrow 5. For arrow 6 and 7 naman, when climate was suitable for production structures featuring plantation agriculture, slavery, and other types of mass exploitation of indigenous labor were introduced. In other areas where indigenous people survived contact in sufficient numbers and mineral wealth was available, vast lands grants that included claims to labor were established by Spain, although resulting from different comparative advantage. Economic and political inequality were high and remained high in all of these economies, even among free men, which had long-lasting negative effects on the development. In arrow 8, this is where geography undoubtedly influenced early economic history in Europe, leading to evolution and timing of European development. In arrow 9, development in Europe gave it advantages over most other regions, advantages that were used to colonize much of the world, but the types of colonial regimes implemented varied considerably depending on conditions prevailing at the time of colonization, both in different parts of the world colonized and within the colonized home country. The timing of European development influenced the type of colonial regime established. In Arrow 10, Arrow 10, the types of colonial regimes established, while always designed for benefit of the colonizers, were influenced by local and European supply and demand factors. The type of regime had enormous influence on post-colonial institutional quality. Arrow 11, besides creating specific institutions, European colonizations created or reinforced differing degrees of inequality, often correlated siya with ethnicity, ultimately leading to diminished prospects for growth and development, notably in Latin America and the Caribbean. High inequality often emerged as a result of slavery in regions where crops could be inefficiently produced on slave plantations. They also emerged as where a large settled indigenous populations could be coerced into labor, such in histories had long-term consequences, particularly in Latin America. The degree of inequality itself can shape the evolution of institutions as well as specific policies where was extreme. There was less investment in human capital as reflected by arrow 13 and other public goods, which is arrow 16, and as reflected by the bidirectional arrow, a tendency of less movement toward democratic institutions. Besides creating specific institutions, European colonization created or reinforced different degrees of inequality, often correlated with ethnicity. This history of long-term consequences, particularly in Latin America, in the direction from the inequality, inequality to post-colonial institutional equality, Arrow 12 reflects what has been termed the social conflict theory of institutions. The mechanism reflected by Arrow 13 is that when high inequality led to low human capital investments, high inequality negatively impacts human capital development. Example, yung education and health, access to resources and opportunities is limited to elites. In Arrow 14, clearly, clearly human capital has a direct impact on income and on human development. It emphasizes that the growth of human capital through factors like education, health, and skill development has a positive effect on income and development. In arrow 15, the depth and breadth of education in the population will help determine the effectiveness of government as a force for development. This is due not only to the better qualified civil service, but also to the understanding of citizens of poor government, performance, and the knowledge of how to work for a better outcome and capacity to organize. In arrow 17, it is when democratic governance, rule of law, and constraints on elites will encourage more and better quality public goods. In arrow 18, it is where better property right protections and contract enforcement for ordinary citizens and broad access to economic opportunities will spur private investments. In 19, arrow 19, it is reflected that institutions will affect the ability of social society to organize and act effectively as a force independent of state and market. In arrow 20, high quality public goods lead to improved economic income levels and overall human development by providing the foundation for economic growth and social welfare. In 21, efficient market drive economic growth, generating higher incomes and contributing to human development through better resource allocation and innovation. In arrow 22, uh, an, an engaged and active civil society promotes better governance, which can improve development outcomes by ensuring that the public policies benefit the broader population. Clearly, the activities of the three sectors, public goods quality, well-functioning markets, and effective civil society will have an influence on productivity and income on human development more generally as reflected by arrows 20, 21, and 22. It is not yet entirely clear which economic institutions are more important in facilitating development. or the degree to which strength in one's institution can compensate for weakness in another. Clearly, there are paths to economic development, but a key in finding of research is that forces that protect narrow elites in ways that limit access of the broader population to opportunities for advancement are major obstacles to successful economic development. If institutions are highly resistant to attempts at reform, this helps clarify why development is so challenging. Nevertheless, in most countries with poor institutions, there is still much that can be done to improve human welfare and to encourage the development of better institutions.
Hello everyone. Ngayon po, we are going to talk about the classic theories of economic growth and development. So, under these topics are the lessons like classic theories of economic development, the four approaches, development as growth and the linear stage theories, structural change models, the international the international dependence revolution, the neoclassical counter-revolution, market fundamentalism, and classic theories of development reconciling the differences. So, the first topic would be discussed by Aljon po.
Like, like the classic post-World War II literature on economic development has been dominated by four major and sometimes competing strands of thought. These are the linear stages of growth model, theories and patterns of structural change, the international dependence revolution, and the neoclassical free market counter revolution. The classic theories of economic development focus on understanding how economies grow and develop, especially in the context of underdeveloped or developing countries. Below are four major classic approaches. The linear stages of growth model. This approach views economic development as a series of successive stages that all countries must pass through. Two key components here are Rostow's stages of growth and Harold's Domar growth model. In structural change model, this approach focuses on the transformation of economies from traditional agrarian structures to modern industrialized economies. International dependence models, this theory suggests that underdevelopment is a result of exploitative relationship between developed and underdeveloped countries. In reaction to the structural and dependency theories, the neoclassical approach emerged in late 20th century, advocating for free market principles as the solution to development problems. Like,
So let's proceed po dito sa development as growth and linear stages theories. So sa development as growth po, there are two fundamentals in the field of developmental psychology, and dito rin po pinapakita or pinapaliwanag how individual progress and chance throughout their lives. Next po.
Yes po ba?
So, po, next. Dito po, there are two approaches to determine the economic growth. So, first po, we have Rastow stages of growth, also known as Rastow stages of model and of development po. So, dito po, the most influential and advocate of the stages of growth model and development was the American economic historian which is si Walt W. Rastow. Kaya po yan po yung pangalan ng stages na yan, nanggaling po sa kanya. And according po sa kanya, there the transition from underdevelopment to development can be described in terms of series of steps or stages through which all countries must proceed. This part will also summarize economic growth of countries into 5 different stages. The 5 steps. So first po, we have a traditional society. So sa traditional society characterized by subsistence farming or hunter-gathering. In other words, it is a strong sense of community where people know each other o nagtatrabaho po silang sama-sama. And po sa pangalawa po, meron po tayong precondition to take off. So ito pong pangalawa refers to the factors that need to be in the place for society to experience rapid economic and social growth. So these factors daw po can include things like a large, educated workforce, access capital, and support governance, which can attract more investment or drive innovation po. And sa take-off naman po, ito po yung refers to the period of rapid growth and industrialization that a society to an industrialized modern one. So dito po sa take-off na to is this period is characterized by the growth and factories and urbanization and development of new technologies. And dito po sa pang-apat, we have a drive to maturity. So refers to the period after the takeoff when a society continues to grow and develop but at a slower pace. So during this time po, the focus shift from rapid industrialization to building, infrastructure, education, and healthcare system and improving living standard. So dito po, hindi lang po pinopokus dito po yung paggagawa ng mga pabrika or mga produkto, kundi dito rin po yung mga pangunahing pangailangan ng mga tao, kagaya po ng mga magandang kalsada, paaralan, hospital, or mga pwede pong mapaganda sa pamumuhay po nila. And last po, we have an age of high mass consumption po. Ito po is refers to the period in a society's development when there is a large affluent middle class with a disposable income to spend on consumer goods. So this is typically seen in developed countries and is characterized by the growth of retail advertising and consumer cultures po. So, proceed po tayo dun sa pangalawang approach po, which is yung Harrod-Domar growth model. Yung Harrod-Domar growth model po, also known as a AK model. This refers to economic growth model that emphasizes investment and saving as key drivers of economic development. So, dito po meron po tayong example. So example po, yan po. Yung imagine a country saved 10% of its income and has a capital output ratio of 80 means so ano daw po, every $4 invested, they get $1 in output. So the Harrod-Domar model predicts a 2.5 growth rate po. Ang gagawin lang po natin dyan is ipagdi-divide lang po yung saving ratings po niya dun sa output ratio po niya para po makuha po yung predict po ng growth rate po. Yun lang po.
So next is the structural change models. Structural change models are used in economics and various other fields to understand and analyze changes in economic structures over time. These models help explain how economics or economies or systems adjust to shifts in factors such as technology, policy, or external. Next po. The Lewis theory of economic development. The Lewis two-sector models developed by economist Arthur Lewis framework. It is a theory of development in which surplus labor from the traditional agricultural sector is transferred to the modern industrial sector, the growth of which absorbs the surplus labor, promotes industrialization, and stimulates sustained development. The Lewis two-sector model developed by economist Arthur Lewis is a framework used to analyze economic development, particularly in developing countries. The model divides the economy into two sectors. Traditional agricultural sector. This sector is characterized by low productivity and surplus labor. It often consists of subsistence farming with minimal technological advancement. Number 2 is the modern industrial sector. This sector features higher productivity, advanced technology, and typically offer better wages and working conditions. Model 1 is the dual economy. The model emphasizes the coexistence of the traditional and modern sectors within a single economy. Model 2 is the labor transfer. Economic development is driven by transferring labor from the traditional sector to the modern sector. As labor moves to the industrial sector, it increases overall productivity and economic growth. Surplus labor. The traditional sector initially has surplus labor, meaning there are more workers than needed for current production levels. This surplus labor can be absorbed into the modern sector without affecting agricultural output. Wage differentials. Wages in the modern sector are typically higher than those in the traditional sector. This wage differential incentivizes workers to move to the modern sector. Economic growth. As labor moves from agricultural to industry, the overall economy grows. The modern sector increased productivity drives economic development, while the traditional sector gradually becomes more efficient or shrinks. Next po. The patterns of developmental analysis of structural change focuses on the sequential process through which the economic, industrial, and institutional structure of an underdeveloped economy is transformed over time to permit new industries to replace traditional agriculture as the engine of economic growth. Patterns of developmental analysis of structural change involve studying how economies evolve over time as they transition from traditional to more advanced economic structures. These patterns reveal how economic structures evolve over time and help in understanding development trajectories. Number 1, sectorial shift. Economies typically start with a large agricultural sector and gradually shift towards industrial and service sectors. This shift is driven by technological advancement, increased productivity, and changing consumer demands. Urbanization. As industrialization progresses, there is often a migration from rural to urban areas. Cities grow as they offer more job opportunities and better living standards compared to rural areas. Economic diversification. Early stage economies might rely heavily on a few industries or sectors. Over time, they diversify into various industries, reducing dependence on any single sector and spreading economic risk. Income distribution. Initially, income distribution can be quite uneven, with wealth concentrated in certain sectors or regions. Over time, as development proceeds, efforts may be made to address income inequality through policies and investments. Technological change. Development often involves adapting new technologies that increase productivity and efficiency. Next. Conclusions and implications. Structural changes that we have described are the average patterns of the development that Chenery and his colleagues observed among countries in time series. and cross-sectional analysis. The major hypothesis of the structural change model is that development is an identifiable process of growth and change whose main features are similar in all countries.
Dinig po. There are several theories, but in today's lesson, we will focus on the international dependence revolution. Every nation strives after development, and throughout the years, this involves radical changes in institutional, development, social, and also in the administrative structures, as well as in the popular attitudes, customs, and beliefs. In the international dependence revolution, we have three models. It includes the neoclassical dependence model, the false paradigm model, and the dualism model. The international dependence revolution is more radical than the previous models, and the international dependence models view developing countries as beset by institutional, political, and economic rigidities in both domestic and institutions. And the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries are caught up in a dependence and dominance with rich countries. But what do we mean when we say dependence? Dependence, these are the countries that are underdeveloped or the developing countries, and they rely on the rich countries. And when we say dominance, they lead the dependence and they are more rich. The first model is the neoclassical dependence model, a model whose main proposition is that underdeveloped exists in developing countries because of continuing exploitative economic, political, and cultural policies of former colonial rules toward less developed countries. It means that the underdeveloped exist in developing countries because they are treated unfairly or they are unbiased or political corruption like that. While in the false paradigm model, this is less radical. And in this model, they believe that underdeveloped or the developing countries are being like that or continue being poor because they are based on an incorrect model of development, one that, for example, overstressed capital accumulation or market liberalization without giving due consideration to the needed social and institutional change. And in the dualistic development thesis, or also known as the dualism, this is the coexistence of two situations or phenomena, one desirable and the other not, that are mutually exclusive to different groups of society. For example, extreme poverty and affluence, modern and traditional economic sectors, growth and stagnation. In the dualism or dualistic development thesis, they believe that there are two worlds, the world of poor and the world of rich. They believe that there is a large gap between those two, and in order to lessen or to minimize that gap, the developed countries or the rich people need to help the poor people in order for them to develop.
So let's continue to our next topic, which is the neoclassical counter-revolution market fundamentalism. Next, please. So the neoclassical counter-revolution started way back in 1980s. It was formed in United States, Canada, and Great Britain. So napag-usapan nung ibang yung countries na yun na ipatupad to. So pinapatupad to ng also nanalo to sa botohan ng World Bank and the Monetary I forgot, International Monetary Funds. And ang silbi nito is para, dahil nag-evolve ang freer markets ng mga taong uh, pinatupad nila ito so they can manage it. And from this results from poor allocation dahil dito sa neoclassical counter-revolution na nagaganap, mas nagiging poor allocation dahil mas unfair yung prices, like binibenta nila ito sa incorrect prices. And under this we have two free market analysis. So first, what is free market analysis? So free market analysis is yung dito ini-indicate or dito makakapagsabi sa part of theory na kung ano yung best government or best na pamumuno na which best government fits the country. So I'll explain that later, but please next po. Next po, please. So under free market analysis, we have public choice theory and market-friendly approach. So pag sinabi natin public choice theory, governments can do better. So hindi nagagamit ng maayos yung mga pondo ng taong bayan and instead binubulsa nila. So example, dito sa Philippines, di naman maiiwasan yung mga ganung officials. And second, we have the market-friendly approach. So pag ang isang country is underdeveloped, yung government is gagawan nila ng paraan yon. So magsiset sila ng budget para dun sa facilities sa kailangan ng country na yon, and time to time mabubuo yon, and mas nagiging maayos yung paglagan ng economy nila. Next po, please. Second, we have this traditional growth theory. And we have this solo neoclassical growth model indicates or it implies na economies as same as income of a worker. So we have this computation, next po. We have this computation sa libro na ginagamit to para fair yung mga income ng mga workers sa isang country. Please see next po. So Y is equals to GDP. So yung formula nito is Y is equals to GDP. Yung K is the capital raised to A, and yung A naka open and close parenthesis doon is yung tawag dito, yung productivity of labor, and yung L is labor itself minus the A minus A. So Y is equals to K raises to A times productivity of the labor times labor, and yung A represents minus siya, negative S. And for that, we have also tinatawag dito sa theory na to na open and closed economies. So pag sinabi natin open economies, it means na the country itself don't participate in activities in imports and exports. Di sila active sa ganun. And pagdating naman sa closed economies, open economies, closed economies in-explain ko kanina. And yung open economies is mas active sila sa pag-i-import and export ng products, goods, ganun. And for conclusion, these theories na sinabi ko kanina explains na minsan hindi we have two analyzations on paano tumakbo yung governments, and countries can select of which is the best for them. That's all po.
Stephen.
Okay, balik guys. So, to conclude lang, no, yung discussions natin, pinapakita niya sa atin talaga na history does matter and napakaraming approaches na pwedeng gamitin sa economic development, each offering different kinds of strengths and weaknesses, and napakarami ding conditions and criteria for a country to prevail as a developed and developing country. So, importante rin na alam natin yung kaibahan ng dalawa, and um, even though na napakaraming pagkakaiba-iba ng mga theories and ideologies, it provides insights to us about the economic development. And while the neoclassical economic emphasizes the difference and the need for the government's intervention to the market, it gives us the um, knowledge for the development, for the future development challenges, and as well as the solutions to it. So with that, that ends our discussion, and I hope you learned something.